people, right? Then they hit about 40 and 50 and start asking harder questions. What is all this work actually building? A bigger paycheck can help, sure, but it doesn't automatically give a man freedom. Freedom comes when his money, wealth, time, his health, and family are moving in the right direction. Legacy is the same way. It is built through assets you create and the health you have to protect it long term. And the example to your family that sees you every day as well. Today, I am joined by Elaine Kawawaka, author of The Wealth Elevator. Lane helps busy professionals understand where they are financially and how to build wealth with more strategy, less stress, and a clearer path toward freedom. He's a real estate expert as well. That gives you a strong setup for what's happening here on our conversation. Welcome, Lane, to our conversation here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Aloha, everybody.
Yes, aloha, right, exactly, because he's from Hawaii. I've been to Oahu. I love the place, and I want to go back for sure. Let's start off the conversation. We can certainly talk about Hawaii here, but what is one powerful takeaway you want everyone listening in to have?
Yeah, I mean, this one's going to go out to the guys over 1 million net worth. I mean, those are accredited investors. We're going to talk
Right.
about, how the wealthy invest, what they do for taxes, and, things that I learned when I kind of passed that pedestal back in 2015.
Right. It's a big accomplishment to have seven figures of wealth in there. And a lot of guys listening in can attune to that. And we do want to focus on why taking care of yourself along that route is super important so that you can keep it and not spending on healthcare, someone wiping your butt or something. So let's start off talking about some of exercise and such. You're a CrossFit fan, you like walking, you take care of yourself because obviously it's important. So let's jump in.
Yeah. What do I do for fitness? For
Yeah.
me, it's got to be quick, right? So that's why I kind of picked CrossFit. I think I've been doing it since 2010, 2012, somewhere in there. I was in college. I was always that, do 2 hours in the gym and that type of stuff. But it kind of gets old, and when you
Right.
actually like, I was an engineer back in the day, and life was pretty busy. And then kind of doing the second job on the side of investing, you don't have very much time to just bro out at the gym all day long.
No,
So I
you
think
do
that's where the
not.
CrossFit came in. I
Yep.
mean, now I'm in my 40s, so it's a little bit different now. But yeah, I like the intensity. Like I like a lot of the whole grit, the idea of chippers, right? You kind of just chip away at things. It's very
Yes.
synonymous with investing and wealth building.
Right. Right. And especially with CrossFit, I used to own two CrossFit gyms. I had the fortune of taking a personal training client, Betty Finley, at the age of 60 to the CrossFit Games. We went three times. She won, got second and eighth. And it is a discipline. You get a lot of discipline. You work through a lot of challenge, and life is going to have lots of challenges for you. So by choosing to do hard in the gym, whether you do CrossFit or you do bro splits or any of that stuff, by choosing to take care of yourself and lifting weights and all that stuff, it helps separate you, especially when times get tough, because they will at some point. The grass isn't always green, especially in ownership, and there are going to be ways that you need to be able to manage for sure. So you're busy taking care of yourself. How do we do with food and all that other stuff around? You were swigging some water here a little bit ago.
Yeah, I mean, I got a coffee recently. I just do drink tea, and then
Okay.
I used to do the keto stuff a decade ago. I love my bread and rice and sushi too much. So,
Yeah,
I'm
right.
I'm a little bit moderate there. I probably partake a little bit too much in, good food, steakhouses, omakases, Michelin stars.
Yeah.
That's probably what I spend my money on these days. So, but I guess I kind of balance that with, being a little bit more rigorous with sleeping and diet or exercise, right? Where I let the diet kind of go a little bit.
Right, right. Well, if you're moving plenty and you're taking care of yourself and you're more selective of when you actually eat these more indulgent foods and you don't just binge out on it, then it's fine. moderation, balance, flexibility definitely work. Especially, we just went out last night. My wife and I were celebrating our 20th anniversary, and she's a travel advisor by her own profession and business. She sends people on bucket list trips, and she sold out her women's only trip, and we wanted to celebrate that. And so we went to a nice fine restaurant and had, it was Italian because she's going to Puglia. So I had some pasta and enjoyed it. And
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
fine.
I mean,
Not that
everybody's
big of a
gotta
deal.
celebrate somehow, right? I mean, food and
Uh-huh.
Italian food, I mean, I try and save from noodles, but it's a lot better than, cocaine and other harder things, right? Like, it's a lot better for your health,
Yeah.
you know? Even a
Right.
little sugar here or there.
Right. Exactly. Now, what around taking care of yourself transfers over into your investment strategies or even the wealth elevator itself? And we can even start there, like what the wealth elevator is and why you came up with that concept in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, maybe kinda going back in my story, I
Yeah.
kinda graduated college, became an engineer, and my parents always taught me to go to school, study hard, invest in the 401k, buy a house to live in.
Okay.
I very quickly bought a rental property and, just saved up my money and bought another one, 20% down payments. 2015, I had 11 of these rental properties. But all during this time, I was still on what I call the first floor of the wealth elevator. And, I'll discuss what the wealth elevator. The wealth elevator is basically this construct of there's different levels to the wealth building journey.
Right.
I think most books out there written by like Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey, these kind of guys, they're mainly for folks under $100,000 net worth, make less than 50 grand a year. That's kind of in the basement level of the wealth
Right.
elevator. But in my 20s, I had a good engineering job, was able to save my money and buy assets like rental properties. Or if you like just standard S&P 500, that's great, right? I think
Right.
you're going to get killed with taxes with that stuff eventually, which you can talk more about that later on. But this is kind of that first floor of the wealth of building journey, right? When you're
Right.
under $1 million net worth.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah, saving in a 401k, doing the S&P 500, those are the typical avenues for wealth that you're told to do.
Yeah, and
There are
and
a
I
lot
call
of other
that and
ways,
and I'll
but
I'll say that here because you guys get the joke, right? That's the standard American diet, the SAD diet, right? And so
yeah.
that's the standard American investing diet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I would agree with that. And we all know what the standard American diet has done to us. So, all right. And so you get into rental properties. And why was that the first thing for you to start acquiring assets?
Well, I think like a dummy, I just listened to what everybody says, and everybody said, well, like really wealthy people have real estate, and the numbers make sense, right?
Right.
Like on a rental property, $100,000 home out in the Midwest, 100 goes to repairs, 100 goes to, some capex issues, $100 goes to your property manager, and like $400 or $500 goes to your mortgage and your
Right.
insurance and taxes. And if you buy right, you can produce maybe a couple $100 of passive cash flow every
Right.
single year. No, that doesn't include the tax benefits. The fact that the tenant's paying down your mortgage for you, the equity build up there, and then the leverage appreciation, right? And that
Yep.
was kind of where very early on I was like, well, why would I want to put my money in the 401k? Like I'm making way more money doing this. And I
Right.
wasn't even that good at it, right? I didn't back then, I didn't even know all these like rules, the 50% rule. I didn't, people are looking for like a spreadsheet to underwrite properties. They can go to the website and check. But I didn't know any of that, right? And I was just buying these properties cookie cutter style, not doing any fix or flipping or any nonsense like that, and just working my day job and just buying more and more properties, and it was working, and my net worth was going up, and I was like, well, why doesn't everybody do that, right? But I wasn't around accredited investors or real estate investors back then.
Right. So it was the first avenue and maybe an easy avenue to get in to the fold in the sense of starting to acquire wealth assets that and ownership that actually produces income for you and a little bit more on the passive side so that you have your day job, but then that as well happens. When was the shift that you left the day job that you finally like, I'm done being an engineer here. I'm just going all in on the investing?
Yeah, I mean, it was all this time I was working my engineering job, and I had 11 rentals in 2015. That was producing maybe a few $1,000s of passive cash flow a month, which is great, right? Not going to complain, but that was most of my clients need about like $10,000 to $20,000 of passive income a month. So I, do the math. I'm no dummy. I'm an engineer. I can do the math. I would have needed like 30 to 50 properties. And
Right.
the headache on that is just massive. And the legal
Right.
liability on that is just massive, especially for wealthy people. And this is, I just kind of luckily met a lot of other purely passive investors during this time that had the same pedigree, probably were a lot older than me at the time, but they had a lot of rental properties too, and they were selling them and going into syndications and private placements into larger deals where they could just go passive and not be the managing member and the person on the hook for lawsuits and the one getting the debt in their own name. They could just
Yeah.
join on many of these types of deals. So I was like, all right, this makes a lot of sense, right? I mean,
Right.
there's a thing or two about getting in these types of rooms, and this is why we're big on community, and that's how you get deal flow on this private investment side. But this is where I quickly realized that the wealthy did things very differently than buying rental properties or what normal people will do out there. And I realized like, wow, I should probably turn this into a job after investing in maybe about 15 deals.
Hmm.
Usually you put about 50 grand or so into them, so, and I was selling the single family homes off, right, too, at the same time.
Right.
And a lot of the people I had access to, because I didn't have a network, my parents weren't accredited investors. They even have rental properties, by the way. But a lot of people I invested, just some of the deals just didn't do well. And I was like, well, let me just do this myself. So that was kind
Yeah.
of where we
Right.
started to syndicate, smaller apartment buildings, the older ones, a little bit rougher ones. And that's where we got kind of traction heading into 2018, 2019, and then 2020 went over $1 billion of deals. And then that's kind of where we kind of followed their momentum. And I think, yeah, I quit 2018, my engineering
Okay.
job, to do this full time.
Okay. Okay.
But I would
Mm.
say, that's my story. But like, I think what we try to get for all our folks is, just try and get involved in this world. But for the most part, your highest and best use may be just working at your day job or your business. Awesome. Well, that's why they call passive investing for a reason. So that when
Right.
you're ready to go full investor mode, when your net worth is over 4 mil, then you know where to put it. But when you're under $4 million net worth, or on the first and second floor of the wealth elevator, by the way, that's the ranges there. You got to make money. You got to trade time for money. You got to do a
Right.
thing.
Right.
And that's a hard place to be, but for everybody who made their wealth, right? I mean, we consider our group a bunch of founders, right? The first generation multimillionaire in their family. There's always this concentrated, whether it takes 5 years, some people it takes them a little bit longer, 20 years. But there's this point where you're just saving and grinding and investing and it just churning. And then one day you wake up, you're at $4.5 million net worth, 5 million net worth, and you could just put it into T-bills if you wanted and get $25,000 of passive cash flow every month. But that's kind of the idea, right? The wealth elevators, like you go
Right.
from each floor. There's a different mindset and strategy at each floor, from investment and tax strategy, and you kind of just follow the blueprint, right? Like, I mean, these are all the things that I experience, share through my wealth building journey.
Right. So let's start with the basement. So we have the basement, first floor, and it goes up from there. Let's define the wealth elevator so everyone knows where they're even at in this. What floor they're on.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm big on, like, understanding who you are. I mean, there's a lot of like social media tips, financial tips out there, especially, but
Oh yeah.
at what point in the journey does it make sense? So, we kind of talked about the first floor. So that's when you're under $1 million net worth, but you're making some money. When you go over $1 million, I mean, you're technically called a accredited investor, net worth $1 million or greater, or you make over $200,000 a year. Now, this is important because now it unlocks a lot of private deal flow that you could invest in. And I'll mention, this is a big concept that I kind of realized luckily early on, that when you invest in the stock market or Wall Street products, right? Those financial planner stuff, you're investing in the same investments but through the secondary market, sloppy seconds, the retail market, right?
Right. Right.
Um, like what we try to do, or like when I was buying rental properties, I was the guy, right? You don't get no closer to the source of the deal than that, right? Or
Right.
when you invest in a syndication, right, you personally know the operator who's running that deal, right? The general partner, and you're part of the passive investor, the LP capital stack. And it's about, the name of the game is about cutting out the middleman, and that's
Right.
been frustrating for me. Like a lot of people just blindly put their money in their 401k and they just get killed with fees. Well, Wall Street takes all the profits and you take all the risks. I mean, how else do these guys make all this money and have these big corporate salaries and big buildings? They're not doing it because they're nice guys, that's for sure. But
Right.
welcome to the investment industrial complex. This is like supplements, right? Like I don't know, I think I'm right with
Yeah.
this, but like you can just
Oh
buy the
yeah.
same supplements on Buck supplements. Is that where the
Yeah.
bros get it from?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's what I
or
do. It's right over there. My creatine is like half off of whatever the other creatine that has all the fancy shiny package to it.
Yeah,
Mine's
yeah,
just white.
we probably shouldn't say what companies there are, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean I mean, not, I'm gonna say we're like, I know there's a health podcast. I'm not saying that those are good, right? But
Right.
um, it's just an illustration of like how everything works out there in life, right? Like
Right.
you have the original source, and if you're able to get closer to the original source, you're able to get a better deal. But that said, the dangers of this, like in investing or anything else, you have to make sure you're buying good stuff, right? Like whether it's peptides or
Right.
investments, right? And I think that's where you pair with getting to know other people that invest alongside with you. That's why we do a lot of community investor events for accredited investors only. And that's, I've always been big on personally knowing the deal operators or operating deals
Right.
ourselves.
Right. You build that know, like, and trust, and then there's a familiarity, and then there's group risk that everyone's willing to take because of the relationships that you have and the opportunity that there is because you're talking about it and you're assessing it and you're going through, is this a good deal or not? And are we all going to do this or not?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Or
I
is
think
this
that's
guy run
awesome.
off of my money, right? I think is the thing that everybody's thinking, especially on this rung of investments. And that's,
Right.
you are getting off the beaten path. And
Oh, very much so.
I've been burned many, many times, but I'm still here doing kind of the same stuff right today.
Right.
And I was lucky enough to start with real estate, where you can kind of underwrite the deals and it's physical, tangible. And lately I've been branching out to more private equity, angel investments, less brick and mortar kind of things, investments.
Right.
But what I realize is this is the way the wealthy invest, right?
Right.
They're
Right.
not, definitely not doing a 60/40 allocation, which, by the way, I'm not a certified financial planner, so I'm not
Right. Right.
allowed to
Right.
talk about asset allocation mix, so don't listen to me on that stuff. But
Right, right, yeah.
I,
I
I
always
know,
have to say this is not medical
yeah.
advice. Talk to your doctor, right? Talk to your financial planner or whoever you trust with money and investments first and foremost. But Lane is offering his experience around what he has gone through and what he finds to be best and
Yeah,
in his
yeah.
group and
And
experience
when
and
we're
all.
talking about experience too, in my experience, most of the people I work with change their CPAs because a lot of those CPAs don't know what the heck they're doing in terms of investing, and they do
Right,
taxes, they do the forms,
right,
but they don't know anything about tax strategy. And
right.
if they knew the power of real estate and passive losses, bonus depreciation, they'd probably be doing it too. And then therefore they wouldn't be counting beans and doing the taxes
Right.
every April and
Yeah, right.
October, stressing themselves out, right? Like,
Right. Right. Yep. That is very much the routine of a typical CPA. So not leveraging tax laws and opportunity to be able to maximize outcomes for themselves and for their clients.
yeah. But a lot of good CPAs, the ones that get it, they see it firsthand from their clients. Holy crap, look what this guy has. And look how
Right.
his passive losses is knocking out his passive income, and how his, like, he barely pays his any taxes legally. Maybe I should emulate some of this, right? Like,
Right.
just like, some people are like, oh, the rich don't pay any taxes, right? They really should be asking, like, well, how can I emulate some of that too, legally, of course, right?
Of course.
But this is what I was doing, like, in around 2016. I was going from the first floor to the second floor of the wealth elevator, and I was interacting with a lot of accredited investors, and I was kind of distilling down all these best practices, like investing in alternative investments such as real estate that happen to kick off all these great tax benefits, to then cut your tax bill drastically, and then also run it through an infinite banking life insurance plan that's created the special way. That we're not going to get into that. That's a kind of a rabbit hole. Doesn't move the needle
Right.
as too much as the taxes, especially for the high income earners over $400,000 AGI. But um, this what I realized, it was kind of simple, and it kind of frustrated me that like the average person out there is able to implement these strategies pretty easily, but boy, is it different than everything that we're taught out there.
Right, right. You go back to even say on the nutrition side, if we would just properly teach people that how to read a nutrition label properly and how to have better balanced meals and avoid junk food, then we wouldn't be in a national epidemic of obesity
Yeah,
and all the results of it.
yeah,
And it's not hard. Or same thing with financial and saving or and investing in your money. If we could all teach that better in our youth, then we wouldn't have such credit card debt.
yeah,
Right there.
yeah. But it's not as simple as like, hey, eat less calories than you consume, dummy. Or just
Right,
like,
right,
oh,
right.
spend less money than you
Right.
make, right?
Save, yeah, save
Like
more than you spend, right? Yep.
yeah, like I mean,
Yeah, those are very
that's great for the
basics.
people in the basement level of the wealth elevator, who are trying to get
Right.
out of debt.
Right.
But when you are wealthy, like a lot of it is the access to the
Right.
investments, the people, um, and like unfortunately, you can't just stay on your computer and just click buttons, right? You got to kind of get out there and meet people,
Right.
and access the public, or the primary market is what they call it, right? Direct access, which is known as the private markets.
Nice. Now, when someone accomplishes specific financial goals and stability around those, what is the say let's go with the accredited investor, like what is that step of, okay, I have active income from my job and I'm creating passive income, how do I get to that accredited investor level for someone listening in?
Yeah, I mean, there's no test, right? It's kind of like you're pregnant or
Right.
not. If you got $1 million net worth, or you're $200,000 in income or greater, congratulations, you're an accredited investor. You're on the second
Okay.
floor of the wealth elevator. The next big milestone it kind of ranges for most people. I would say like $4 to $5 million as a general rule of thumb in terms of net worth, because at that point, then you're able to just invest in really low risk, low return stuff like T bills, and just generate a return where you're able to live the rest of your life infinitely.
Mhm.
And that's the point where you have enough net worth where the critical mass launch, you're able to launch to outer space and break gravity at that point,
Right,
or what people
right,
known
right.
as financial independence at that stage. The reason kind of what we do is that we try and teach people how to, you get to that point, you stop trading time for money, right? Whether you run a business or you're just a W-2 employee, you're trading time for money, and you may make a lot of money, and that's great, right? But what you want to get to is hit your you gotta put in a lot of work and effort to get to that point where you get critical mass, and now you're not trading time for money, but you're allocating your money so it works harder for you. You know, I mean, you get to that
Right.
point and you just want to buy T bills, awesome, great, right? I actually think that's a pretty nice idea. But the idea is like, now you talk about legacy, right? Like, what do I want? Do I want this to grow to 8 figures and above? Do I want my kids to kind of learn how to do this and
Right.
be capital allocators instead of just worker bees that trade time for money? You know, I'm not gonna get too. I mean, we talk a lot about legacy building, what to do, how to teach the kids, how to teach them about wealth building and legacy. But I think that's where it's different for everybody, right? I think that what I try to do and focus mainly on is getting people to that point.
That point, yeah. So then they have a lot of opportunity at that point, and they can be able to pass it on to generations to come, which
Yeah,
is important because everybody wants to take care of their family typically.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I would argue that if you give each kid more than $2 million each, you have 2 kids, 4 million net worth, then any more would be a little overkill, and you might make things worse. But um, at the very least, I think you work a goal and try and get the financial independence. So now that you can change the lifestyle from working to actually enjoying and doing things for a reason and building, adding value to the world.
Right.
But the idea is like, how quickly can you get there? If you get there by the time you're 80, I know you got some fit guys out there, but it's kind of
Yeah. Yeah,
too,
you're into the
too
rope no matter what, which way you
right.
look. Yeah.
Right. But if you spend a decade or two in, steadily increasing your net worth, it's not unheard to get there before your 40s. That's for sure. I mean, in
Right.
fact, most of our
Right.
clients are like, I think we were talking earlier, like median age 47,
Right.
people who come to our events, typically in their 50s.
Yeah.
Part of it is you need time. You need time on your side, especially if you've done
Right.
it the wrong way, the standard way. Um,
Right.
but yeah, this I think what gets them is like they understand, like, you're investing directly in the deals as opposed to kind of going through the normal channels.
Now, with someone listening in that's hearing these things and they're not at, say, accredited investor level, how do you start speaking into their mind or their ideas to shift them from what what they have been doing to get them to see the opportunity that is in front of them that's available to everyone? Like where's how do you do that?
What's their income level?
Well,
That's my
let's say they are clearing like six figures, 100K, and but they obviously want to go up to over 200.
Yeah, I mean, that
How,
was me in my 20s, right? Like I was kind of, but I was able to save 20, 30 grand per year. And then, I used that to buy one rental property. And
right,
then I wasn't only saving 20, 30 grand because each rental property increased my passive income a little bit, right? So, you know, by the time I had 11 rental properties, I was making an extra 60,000 a year. So maybe I
okay,
was netting 30, saving 30, but with my investments, I was plus 60, so plus 90, right?
right,
So now I was able to buy 3 rental properties there, right? And that's, I just say that as like, maybe that's motivating, right? Because like this is the hard part. It's a hockey stick. In the beginning,
yes,
it's like watching grass grow. I mean, it's even
oh
harder
yeah,
when you're under 100,000. The basement level of the wealth level is the hardest place,
right,
especially when you don't make too much.
right,
Most of my clients are able to save at least 20 grand, 20, 30 grand per year from their paycheck. But if you're not there yet, that's fine. Just it's just gonna take you a little bit more longer. And but get on that escalator, buy assets, buy real estate, and then that every year that monthly savings amount will go up.
yeah. What about investing in skills to be able to then grow your income through that manner of for me it's like sales and marketing. And the better I'm at as a marketer, then the more opportunities are going to come my way. How would you talk about that in this aspect so that you level up your abilities and see these things all of a sudden because of the exposure that you're putting yourself through?
Yeah, I mean, I would say half of my clients are like W2 guys where, you know, they're gonna make what they're gonna make, right? If they kiss enough butt and pass enough, what their boss wants, their salary should grow, right? Definitely outpace
Right,
inflation, right? If they get some promotions here or there.
right.
But the guys like you're saying, right? Like, does it make sense for me to? I mean, obviously the business owners are gonna say, heck no, I'm not gonna go to college. That's a waste of money. And I would probably agree with that at that point, right? But
Yeah,
ticket
my
shaming.
my 16-year-old is really struggling right now. He's like, "Why am I going to go to college? AI will just give me the answers." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"Well, I mean, you're not wrong."
yeah. So the business owners out there, yeah, if you spend $20,000 to take a training course, and that improves your close rate by 10%, that leads to an extra $100,000 a year. That's a 5x ROI. That's
Yeah,
obviously a lot more than what you get in real estate or any other investment out there, other than some crazy risky altcoin.
right.
You probably lose your money doing that too. But another thing would be business owners, and I talk to them all the time, right? Like, maybe, before you passively invest, where you may own, I don't think you're gonna be able to like get more than 30-40% a year, right? Like, but that's easy. If like, if you get an employee, they should easily, or they better make a high ROI for you. So you should do that there first.
Yes.
So
Right.
yeah, I for entrepreneurs out there, especially under the $1 million revenue mark a year, it probably makes more sense to invest in yourself, as they say. But that's why what a lot of investors will do is they'll, a lot of investors come to us after they sold, right? They've sold their company for like 5 mil plus,
Right. So
and then
they
they
have.
parlay that into,
Mhm.
plus they're not liquidity rich, right? They're just all equity rich, cash poor. But
Right.
that, I think that's what's required, right? That's what's required to build something from scratch, is to start always be investing in the business. Now, there's an interesting art to like titrating up to, like, you don't want to wait till your $5 million net worth to start passively investing.
No.
Yet you don't want to passively invest when you're like $500,000 net worth as a business entrepreneur, because you should be investing in your company.
Right.
But I don't know when that starts, right? That's different for
Right.
everybody, you
Right.
know.
To what degree do you start taking risk on these other opportunities to then continue to grow your overall wealth in a sense? And that is,
Right.
yeah, obviously it's for each individual person to decide,
Yeah.
and that of how much risk they're willing to take and accept. And ultimately, you and I both know that that's the name of the game. You got to pay to play. And there's risk in anything. There's risk in just you staying a W-2 employee. You might not have a job tomorrow just
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
AI is going to replace you or whatever. So there's risk in that too. And I'd
Yeah.
much rather take the risk of growing a business, of putting in the sweat equity in the beginning to then get that hockey stick like effect and impact. That's even what, say, like this podcast started. I didn't even want to do podcasts, and then I realized I need to do podcasts, and this is episode 124, so in under a year. So I've been putting in a little bit of work, and it's starting to hockey stick in a
Yeah.
sense, like
Yeah.
we see it.
Yeah.
So
But every situation is different. Like, I have clients like dentists and doctors, and they've got like the entrepreneur bug, right? Because they always see how cool we are. It's
yeah,
not, which
right,
we're
right,
not.
right.
We're not. We're just, on a side note, like, you and I are kind of, are the, we deal with the kind of the same people in terms of the marketing
Right,
world, right? Like, all these
right.
marketers, they want to sell us some newest hack or tactic for 20 grand.
Right.
Most times it's like 5% effective, right? Like, it works 5% of the time, right? And,
Yes.
it's,
Yes.
but
I have definitely bought into
yeah,
courses and
right.
programs and just been
Yeah.
underwhelmed and lackluster. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
as soon as I got behind the curtain, I'm like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm bought into. This isn't
Right.
quite what I thought.
But I mean, we definitely toot our horn when it works, and we meet a lot
Oh,
of
of
cool people
course.
who also buy those silly programs too along the way. So there is some envy
Yes.
from those guys, right? Like, I want to be an entrepreneur, woo, work for myself.
Right.
Although most entrepreneurs are just, trading time for money, and
Right.
they don't really, they own a business that controls them. But
Right.
that's like, but I tell the doctors and dentists, like, dude, you make $600,000 a year, $800,000. You don't want to come to this side of the grass is not greener on this side. Just, you're doing
Right.
fine. Just do what
Right.
you're doing. Maybe do like some like tax mitigation strategies that people in this world will do. Which I certainly think is huge for people who make over $400,000, to
Right.
cut a huge portion of their income. And that's, I think, you just keep being a doctor, right, for the
Yeah.
next half a decade, and you're there.
Right. Yeah. You will be above the 1 mil and in
Yeah.
no time. And as long as you don't spend it on fancy cars and big houses
Right. Right.
and too many fine dining experiences, then you'll get there and be okay. And that's an okay way to go do it, because there's risk either way. But if you have that security in that type of a position, then going to, say, entrepreneur world is it could be a bit more risk than you're used to, because you're used to just going in and doing the thing and not having to think about 1,000 other things that could or couldn't happen along the way too.
Yeah, yeah. But most times, out there in the wild, like, the entrepreneur clients, especially the newer ones, right, that we're talking about, a lot of times they're more apt to just invest in boring investments that might give them 5 to 10%, right? Whereas I have to push them. I have to say, don't do that, dude. Like, go and hire another 2 employees with that money instead,
Right.
right? Like, so
Right.
they're a little bit more on the conservative side. They'd rather have, a bird in hand than a chance at five of them, by being an entrepreneur and spending it on that crazy marketing guy with the $25,000 strategy.
Right. Right. Yep.
And I'm sorry if there's you're the guy, the marketing guy who runs a great business. I'm sure you're great at sales and marketing, but I don't want to offend you. That I'm sure your $25,000 product works.
Yes. Yes.
Works for
Yes.
you, right? Yeah.
Right. 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 Just make sure that you're selling it with ethical intentions and results, and yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Now, as we climb up the elevator, you are exposing yourself to new opportunities, new people, new networks, new way of thinking that can then grow the opportunities that you have, essentially, is what we're talking about, which then it certainly amplifies the risk as you've been burned in the past. I've been burned in different business ventures and such, but the overall outcome is that the each hand that you're playing, a card that you're dealt and playing those is to leverage to be able to get to the next level. Where does this wealth elevator end, or does it? Does it
Yeah. I
just
mean,
keep
I
going
think
up?
I mean, it doesn't really end, but I think when you get past the third floor, it definitely gets easier in a couple of ways. First, you're not working with low life operators, right? Like, I mean, when you first started your business, and even with me, like, if I don't know if you partnered with anybody, but like you just have like fake it till you make it people, and people
I
aren't
had a
proven,
guy that
right?
was the business guy, and I was
Yeah.
the personal trainer coach guy, and he definitely leveraged me.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
at the gym 24/7 all the time doing all the things, and just was happy that I was a gym owner. But man, that those 2 years really taught me something,
Yeah.
quite a
But
bit.
just, I mean, I'm not saying that this is true, but like I'm just saying, for your business, because you've gotten it to a respectable level and you know people and you know other people that know other people, you could probably vet like if you wanted to partner with somebody total left field, like a women's health coach or whatever,
Right,
right?
right,
Like you have access to better deal partners and
right,
operators.
right,
So that makes it a lot easier. And it's actually made our job a lot easier to find good deals because, our network knows good people and we can also cross
hmm,
reference and verify. And
right,
then the other thing is like, in the beginning, the hard part is, when I was first starting out, I had $1 million. If you start doling out $50,000 per project, your money doesn't go very far, right? Yeah, you're
no,
diversified in a dozen
right,
or couple dozen deals, but that's not diversification.
right,
Um, I have, I think I had like just under 100 K1s this year, right? I mean, not saying that that's diversification or any gold standard, but if any one or two or five deals go bad, right, you still have the greater whole, right? So you're diversified and
right,
more solid that way.
right,
But these are the kind of things that you try and teach the next generation about, right? Diversification. You still need to take risks with a portion of your portfolio, but maybe also play the barbell effect, where you have a heavier weight on like the life insurance side that's super low risk, low return, or T bills for that matter,
right,
right? Um, I think that's where the wealth elevator goes on the higher levels. And originally, like, I mean, I had no concept of this before, but
right.
then when we were buying all these apartments, these are the cats who would be buying from, right? And then it'd be
Right,
interesting
because they're
sometimes.
elevating up. They're going on their own wealth elevator, and they're
Yeah.
happy to put
Yeah.
you. All right, hey, you went my first floor level. I'm going to the second or third floor. Bye
Well,
bye.
we would be
Yeah.
buying from generational wealthy families, right? That had, dozens and dozen apartments. And we one case,
Right.
like, we were working with the patriarch, right, but he was on his deathbed, like trying to unload his assets, and his kids, like, for example, like in that one, the kids only wanted the sexy properties in Miami, probably to show off to their friends.
Right.
They didn't want the boring blue collared assets which we wanted in Alabama, right, that
Right.
had a great opportunity in them.
Right.
And so I saw it firsthand. Who am I to say their net worth was like $100 million, right? And they owned a freaking island out there in Alabama. But
Right.
that this is kind of where I got insight into that world and started to build
Hmm.
some friendships in that rung. Um,
Right.
but I think I speak more for the first generation multimillionaires, right? The founders, right? Not the person who inherited millions of dollars,
Right.
but the one who yeah. I mean, at least for me, like my parents sent me to college. They set me up good, but um, didn't have more than a million too, right? Certainly didn't have more than $2 million, right? But if the
Hmm.
idea is you take that and you grow within, that's at least what I want for my kids.
Right. Right. Yeah, and what defines legacy for you as you are going up your own elevator? How do you see the exchange to your generation of kids, and how are you going to pass this on to them?
Oh, I have opinions, and they've changed over the years.
Of course, they should
Yeah,
change, right? Just like
yeah.
anything, it's going to evolve with experience, time, and everything else that happens.
Yeah, so, at one time, I was like, "Let's give them as much money as we can," and like I said, the $2 million more per person is my current belief.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of just giving them the money. I believe that they should ask for it and apply for it for whatever investment or business they want.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd
I
probably agree with
definitely
that one.
I definitely believe in like entrepreneurship is the best form of personal development because it humbles you. Most
Yes.
founders who created their wealth, they're usually pretty humble people, and they realize how lucky they were to get to that
Yes.
point. So
Yes.
yeah, I think it's three things, and I was talking about this on my last podcast that I had that um, I could never put my finger on it, to answer your question. But it like, what kind of kids do I want to raise in this world? Like the first one is I want them to be have autonomy, right? So that means
Yes.
they have some sort of impact into their own well-being. So like that may even mean like, well, for every $1 million that the trust gives you, you have to earn $1 million, right? Something as silly as that.
Right.
Like that kind of reinforces autonomy in a strange way, as opposed to them
Right.
just
Right. Right.
I'm just driving around my Mercedes G wagon. Um, so this kind of puts them into the cycle of they're a contributing value to the world. The next thing is now they need some competence in something, and I think this comes first. It's them building skill sets. Unfortunately, rich kids never
Right.
have to grind or earn any grit in anything, so that's the hard.
Right.
They never
Right.
put in the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours to get good at anything, and therefore a lot of wealthy second, third generation beyond kids have low self-esteem deep down.
Right.
They're just known as like the douchey rich kid who just pays for everybody's drinks. It's the
Right.
stereotype.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, we all know who that person is, right, in our friend group, and
Right.
and hopefully they don't know who they are, but most of them, damn, they're not idiots. They know
No.
that they're that
Right.
person.
They understand self value.
Yeah. The last one is just, being a part of like community or like I always thought like, hey, make it better for the family. But I think, some people like some of investors don't have kids. So I think this like comes into like either church or community, making the world a better place. And, that part of the
Hmm.
autonomy or add values back to your community there. But,
Right.
to me, those are the three things that I think I don't know what I'm gonna I have young kids, so I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I think those are the 3 goals, like, or KPIs.
Yeah. That's brilliant. I really like putting the kids to work in a sense of the entrepreneurship, getting them to get into the weeds of becoming competent in some area that they're interested in, adding value back into the world.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's super important because they have to learn to struggle, to strive, to be humbled, to have success, and be able to foster the skills and the development that you went through, and like I've went through, to be able to
yeah,
acquire ultimately long-term wealth, to be able to add more value, which is the underlying take here. If you've been hearing, is we have to add value to the world, people, no matter which way we look at it. And acquiring wealth allows you to more freely be able to add more value in a positive way.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't want spoiled children, but my
No.
thought process on this has changed quite drastically over the years. I mean, if you would have found me 5 years ago, I was all about, hey, let's engineer a trust where they get X amount when they're 25, X amount 35. 35 is an important number, and then, rest later.
Yep.
And, they got to take drug tests to achieve this. They've got to apply for this funding. All these rules and like kind of over engineering. And I think this came from a place of like, ego, right? I think most founders want to feel like they can come up through the grave and control everybody after their death. But
Yeah.
lately I've been, reflecting on, you know, I just want them to be happy, right? Like I just want them
Right.
to be a contributor to society, as we mentioned, have some confidence in their skill sets, not just because they're rich and everything was given to them, and then have some sense of connection to community on Ohana and be a positive net to the world. And whether that they're like a high powered important doctor in one respect versus someone who is known as a good human being and always helping out, and a teacher, I don't really care, right? Who am I to say,
Right.
right? I
Right.
mean, maybe I'll still buy them each a house so they can live for free and not have to worry about that. Not, I think that's the difference between
Sure.
an engineer who makes $130,000 who hates their job but just needs a little bit extra money versus somebody who's super content and happy making 65,000.
Right. Yeah, totally. And if you say buying a house can offload some of the extra money that they need, or ultimately it ends up being stress relief so that they can be more content and be happier and express joy in a lot of different ways, especially the people closest to them and the others that surround them. That's it's really important. I've experienced that level of wealth too. So like, oh, I don't have to worry about my bills. Like, okay, this is good. Like I can just operate now, and not have to be under the finger of like, oh, here comes another credit card bill in the mail. Like this isn't what you want to have to experience to struggle in that
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, totally. Excellent. This has been great so far. So we've got the wealth elevator. We are acquiring wealth through real estate, through other opportunities of private equity, and getting to know, like, and trust people, network with people, actually not hide behind a keyboard and on the internet. And that's really important. Now, what is one takeaway that these guys should really think about in their own journey of their wealth elevator? Like, what's one last nugget that you can bestow upon them to get them to start to say, like, open their eyes or think differently or plant a seed that starts to fester and grow?
Well, like I said, I think the things that the wealthy do, alternate investments, tax strategies, infinite banking, it's nothing that the average Joe can't implement, although it's very counterintuitive than what we're all taught. And then
Right.
the second thing is you got to know where you're at, right? Self awareness. If you're broke, probably don't want to listen to me, like, but if you're a good accumulator of wealth and you're decent with your budgeting, then it's time to step up to the wealth elevator, grab yourself a book, and then see what floor you're on, and then move from there.
Right. Right. And I know you offered some books as well to the audience. So what can we do to be able to hook them up with a wealth elevator book?
Yeah, well, I mean, I gave them to you, Brian, so it's up to you. I mean, you're the keeper, you're the keeper of the goodies. But people go to Amazon, they buy the book, and I think that then you can leave a review. If you leave a review and you take a screenshot, send it to team@thewealthelevator.com. We'll hook you up with the free PDF so you can upload it to your AI and ask your questions, and the MP3. So I'll just read it to you if you're lazy like me. But if you're old school and and you want those,
A
maybe just reach
hardback.
out to Brian, yeah, through
Yeah.
email, and we'll hook you up with a hard copy.
Yeah. Perfect. And I can get those supplied for you. So, well, excellent. We're going to have a link in the show notes for Lane's info, his stuff, where he's at, and be able to connect with him. And if you have you've got money and you want to elevate your game and start thinking differently, Lane is offering a pretty good opportunity here. Lane, I haven't had anyone talking about investments and anything like you have on my podcast yet. So this is a really good opportunity to explore Lane's world and get connected with him to see different ways of thinking. And that's the name of the game anyways in life, is just not follow just the old patterns of behaviors that we've done. There's lots of opportunity out there that you have to seek out and find and be around other people, right? They always say your net worth is your network, and that's what Lane has shared with us today. So
Yeah.
I want to
It,
thank you so much for coming on board here with us, and then there we go.
yeah. And I'll just kind of close this out is,
Yeah,
it's not too hard to get financial independence. And I think that's where in parallel, you got to do the health stuff, right? Like health is
yeah,
wealth, as they say.
always.
People who don't have money, yeah, I get it, you got to burn both ends of the candle, but I think very quickly when you get on the wealth elevator, you start to realize you're on the fast path to perpetual wealth, right? That kind of keeps growing, and then you're like, well, shoot, I better try
Take
and
care of myself.
live longer so I can take advantage of this thing, right? So
Yeah,
that's why I've always kind of been on the health bandwagon. I mean, it also powers the long hours doing all this stuff,
right.
but yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I second that. I have so many guys that are struggling in their 50s and 60s that start showing up because they were stuck in the business and they never stopped to think about themselves. They just hustle, grinded, and burn the candle at both ends, never to stop, refresh themselves. So it does catch up at some point, probably sooner than you think. So all right, that is it for this episode of Driven for Health. Thank you so much for coming.